The community coming together yesterday for a candlelight vigil to remember Tyra Crosby. CMPD says Stephanie Alexander came home and killed Crosby. Her family tells WCNC Charlotte she was invited over by the husband.
The digital clock on her nightstand flashed 5:21 in the morning when Stephanie Alexander's finger squeezed the trigger. A single gunshot shattered the pre-dawn silence on Porter Street in northwest Charlotte. Moments earlier, she had arrived home unexpectedly from her night shift, needing a computer for a class assignment. What she discovered inside her own home would forever alter multiple lives. "I came home, and I had seen a woman inside my house, and I pulled out my gun and shot, and she's not moving," Stephanie told the 911 dispatcher, her voice eerily calm as 25-year-old Tyra Chanel Crosby lay motionless nearby. The young woman had been invited there by Stephanie's husband, a detail that would become central to this tragedy. In those critical moments before police arrived, an 8-minute voicemail captured sounds that would later haunt courtrooms and family members alike. The recording revealed not a quick, impulsive shooting, but a confrontation, threats, pleas, and ultimately, the gunshot that ended a promising young life. By the time officers reached the northwest Charlotte home, they found Tyra dead from a gunshot wound. Stephanie remained at the scene, gun nearby, waiting for authorities. Her husband stood in shocked silence, caught between his wife and the woman he had brought home. Born on August 28, 1997, Tyra Chanel Crosby radiated creativity and ambition. Her mother, Tanya Hoskins, described her as spontaneous, caring, and loving. A young woman whose vibrant personality left lasting impressions on everyone she met. At just 25, Tyra had already launched her own clothing line, channeling her passion for fashion into entrepreneurship. Friends gathered at her memorial spoke of a beautiful soul and angel whose life held limitless potential. They shared stories of her generosity, her infectious laugh, and her determination to build something meaningful. What made her death all the more tragic was her innocence in the situation. According to her family, Tyra had no idea the man she met at a club was married, no knowledge that the home she entered belonged to someone else. In a cruel twist of fate, the young designer who dreamed of dressing others would never see her vision fully realized. Have you ever wondered how well you truly know the people in your life? The person sitting across from you at a bar, smiling and offering to take you home. Do you know who might be waiting there? Before I continue with Tyra's story, I want you to consider, how do we protect ourselves in a world where appearances can be dangerously deceiving? If you've ever been deceived in a relationship or worried about someone you care about being in a potentially dangerous situation, hit that like button right now. Your engagement helps spread awareness about these critical safety conversations. What boundaries would you establish before going home with someone you just met? What questions would you ask? What red flags might you look for? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight could literally save someone's life. And if you're new here, subscribe to Explosive True Crime Stories, where we don't just tell these tragic tales, we learn from them together. July 18th, 2023 began like any other summer night in Charlotte, North Carolina. The air hung heavy with humidity as Tyra Crosby prepared for an evening out. She carefully selected an outfit from her own clothing line, perhaps unaware these would be the last clothes she'd ever wear. Meanwhile, across town, Stephanie Alexander kissed her husband goodbye before heading to her night shift, expecting to return home the following afternoon. By 10 p.m., Charlotte's nightlife was pulsing with energy. Clubs filled with weekend revelers seeking connection, entertainment, and escape from daily routines. Among them was Stephanie's husband, who arrived alone but wouldn't stay that way for long. Security cameras would later confirm his deliberate movements through the crowd, his eyes scanning for company. Around 11:30 p.m., Tyra and her friends arrived at the same establishment. According to witnesses, she was in high spirits, celebrating a recent success with her clothing business. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and the atmosphere encouraged new connections. It was in this environment that Stephanie's husband first approached Tyra. Their conversation lasted nearly an hour, punctuated by drinks and dancing.
Happening today, family and friends of a woman killed in West Charlotte set to say their final goodbyes today. The community coming together yesterday for a candlelight vigil to remember Tyra Crosby. CMPD says Stephanie Alexander came home and killed Crosby. Her family tells WCNC Charlotte she was invited over by the husband. Wake Up Charlotte's Richard Devane joins us now, and Richard, Alexander now out of jail on bond.
That is correct, and as she's out of jail on bond awaiting her trial for voluntary manslaughter, the family and friends of Miss Crosby are remembering her life, not the way it ended, but the life she lived.
It's a lot of words to describe her.
Family and friends sharing stories and memories of a life cut short. Dozens came together Sunday to remember 25-year-old Tyra Crosby, shot and killed in the early morning hours last Tuesday in a house on Porter Street in East Charlotte. Police say Stephanie Alexander came home and found Crosby inside and shot her. Crosby's family said she was invited to the house by Alexander's husband. Alexander arrested for voluntary manslaughter. The vigil held by mothers of murdered offspring for those who knew the 25-year-old, many of them saying she was kind and loving.
She was beautiful. Her soul, her spirit, inside and out.
She gonna be our angel on our shoulder.
She always knew what to say.
Lighting candles and prayers and releasing balloons, trying to deal with the pain of her death, including her mother, who was the last to light a candle in her memory.
Just to see how many lives she touched and the love that she had in her heart.
Yeah, and again, that ceremony of celebration of life will take place today at noon. We're in West Charlotte. Richard Devane for Wake Up Charlotte.
At approximately 5:10 a.m., Stephanie pulled into her driveway. Neighbors would later report nothing unusual about her arrival. No squealing tires or slamming doors that might indicate she knew what awaited inside. She entered quietly through the side door, using her key. The house was mostly dark, but a faint light spilled from the bedroom down the hallway. What first caught her attention were the unfamiliar shoes by the door and a woman's purse on the entryway table. Then she noticed clothing scattered across the living room floor, items she didn't recognize mixed with her husband's familiar shirt and jeans. Court documents would later reveal that Stephanie paused at this moment, processing what these clues meant. Instead of calling out or leaving, she made a deliberate choice. Stephanie walked to the bedroom closet and retrieved her registered handgun from its lockbox. She checked that it was loaded, released the safety, and then moved toward the bathroom where she could hear voices, her husband's deep murmur and a woman's soft laughter. The digital clock on the nightstand read 5:21 a.m. when Stephanie pushed open the bathroom door, weapon raised, and came face to face with Tyra Crosby. "Who the hell are you?" Stephanie's voice cut through the bathroom steam like a blade. Tyra stood frozen, a towel clutched to her chest, confusion washing over her face as she registered both the strange woman and the gun pointed in her direction. Stephanie's husband lunged forward, positioning himself partially between the two women. "Baby, wait, I can explain," he stammered, hands raised in a placating gesture. But Stephanie's focus remained locked on Tyra, the young woman who had unknowingly entered a marital battlefield. According to court testimony, Tyra immediately tried to defuse the situation, her voice trembling as she gathered her dignity. "I'm so sorry. He told me he was single. I had no idea," Tyra said, backing against the bathroom wall. "Please, I'll just get my things and go." But Stephanie had already crossed a psychological threshold, her finger resting dangerously on the trigger as she processed the betrayal unfolding before her. What happened next became a matter of fierce legal debate. Stephanie claimed she intended only to frighten the intruder, while prosecutors argued the confrontation escalated deliberately. What remains undisputed is that Tyra, sensing danger, reached for her phone on the bathroom counter and pressed the call button to her mother's number. The husband attempted to wrestle the gun away, creating a chaotic three-person struggle in the confined space. "Get out of my way," Stephanie reportedly shouted at her husband. "This is between me and her." Tyra, still clutching her towel with one hand and her phone with the other, began edging toward the bathroom door, desperately seeking escape from a nightmare not of her making. The 8-minute voicemail captured on Tanya Hoskins' phone would become the most damning evidence in the case against Stephanie Alexander. It began with Tyra's panicked whisper, "Mom, if you get this, I need help." What followed was a real-time audio document of her final moments alive. 20 seconds in, Stephanie's voice rings clear. "You think you can come into my house and sleep with my husband?" Tyra's response is barely audible, but she appears to be explaining her ignorance of the marriage. The husband's voice interjects repeatedly, sometimes pleading with his wife, other times attempting to blame Tyra for coming on to him. At the 2-minute mark, the recording captures the sounds of movement, shuffling feet, a thud against a wall, Tyra's frightened cry. "Please let me get dressed and leave," she begs. "I swear I'll never contact him again." Stephanie's response is chilling. "You're not going anywhere until we settle this." The middle portion of the recording documents Tyra's increasingly desperate attempts to reason with Stephanie. Legal experts who analyzed the audio noted that Tyra had multiple opportunities to disconnect the call, but chose to maintain the open line, perhaps understanding it might be her only witness. At 6 minutes and 12 seconds,
Crosby's mom says she wants you to know what really happened to her daughter. She was killed Tuesday morning on Porter Street in Northwest Charlotte. CMPD says Stephanie Alexander arrived home, found Crosby inside, and then shot her. Alexander is charged with voluntary manslaughter. WBTV's Cam Gaskins is live outside CMPD tonight. So Cam, what did Crosby's mom tell you?
Yeah, Molly, she wanted us to know that her daughter, Tyra Crosby, was not an intruder in Alexander's home and was actually invited inside by Alexander's husband. And that's why she believes the charges deserve to be upgraded to first-degree murder. And that's why she wanted to make sure her daughter's story was shared tonight. It's all new at 11.
So I'm here, simply here, begging and pleading for justice for my child.
Thursday night, Tanya Hoskins wanted to make sure that her daughter, Tyra Crosby, was not forgotten and that her full story was shared.
She was our angel, our flower, murdered unnecessarily, lured to a home, and brutally beaten and murdered.
According to CMPD, Stephanie Alexander returned home to her house on Porter Street in Northwest Charlotte early Tuesday morning and found Crosby inside before shooting and killing her. Crosby's mother says that Tyra was invited into that home by Alexander's husband and that her daughter did not know he was married or that he and his wife owned that home.
She was invited there. She did not just pop up there. She was not an intruder. She was invited there.
She also says that Crosby called her in her final hour and left a voicemail in which you can hear Alexander beating her before shooting her. According to Hoskins, it was a prolonged beating, and she's hopeful that this new evidence will elevate the charges against Alexander.
Because right now she's charged with the lowest form of murder. I want it up to first-degree murder.
Alexander was charged with voluntary manslaughter and booked into the Mecklenburg County Jail on Tuesday. Hours later, she was out on bond.
She murdered my daughter at 5 a.m. and she was out at 8 p.m. So that means that human life means nothing anymore.
For now, Hoskins says she'll wait for CMPD to investigate, but she won't let anyone forget.
I don't want the investigators to go away. I won't stop until there's another charge. And justice for my child.
So as we mentioned, Alexander was released on bond Tuesday night and is currently scheduled to appear in court next on August 7th, still facing that initial voluntary manslaughter charge. Reporting at CMPD headquarters, I'm Cam Gaskins, WBTV on your side.
Cam, thank you.
The confrontation escalates dramatically. "Put the gun down," Tyra pleads, her voice breaking. "I have a family too." The husband can be heard attempting to intervene, followed by sounds of a physical struggle. Stephanie's voice cuts through clearly. "You should have thought about consequences before you came here." The final 90 seconds capture Tyra's repeated apologies, footsteps, a door opening, and then the fatal gunshot. The gunshot echoed through the house at precisely 5:21 a.m. According to court testimony, Stephanie claimed she aimed at the wall to scare Tyra, but the bullet struck the young woman in the chest instead. Tyra collapsed in the doorway between the bathroom and bedroom, the phone still clutched in her hand, the call to her mother still connected. "Oh God, what did you do?" Stephanie's husband shouted, dropping to his knees beside Tyra's motionless body. He attempted CPR while Stephanie stood frozen, the gun still in her hand. For nearly 40 seconds, neither of them called for help. A delay prosecutors would later emphasize showed callous disregard for human life. At 5:23 a.m., Stephanie finally dialed 911. "I came home and I had seen a woman inside my house, and I pulled out my gun and shot, and she's not moving," she told the dispatcher with unsettling composure. She made no mention of her husband's presence or his role in bringing Tyra to their home. First responders arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. Tyra Chanel Crosby was pronounced dead at the scene. As police secured the area and separated the couple for questioning, Tanya Hoskins was awakening to discover the horrifying voicemail, the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice. Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officers arrived at the Porter Street residence at 5:32 a.m., securing the scene with practiced efficiency. Body camera footage showed them approaching with weapons drawn, responding to the dispatcher's report of a shooting. Inside, they found a tableau of tragedy. Tyra's body on the bathroom floor, Stephanie seated calmly on the living room couch, and her husband pacing frantically between rooms. "She was in my house," Stephanie repeated to the first officer, who questioned her. The 911 call, later played in court, revealed her calculated framing of events. "I came home and found an unknown female in my house," she told the dispatcher, omitting crucial context about her husband's involvement. Detective Marcus Williams, the lead investigator assigned to the case, immediately noted inconsistencies. The scattered clothing in the living room suggested the encounter wasn't a random break-in. When questioned separately, Stephanie's husband admitted inviting Tyra to their home, directly contradicting his wife's initial statement. By noon, police had gathered preliminary evidence, including the weapon, surveillance footage from neighboring homes, and witness statements. What they didn't yet have was the voicemail on Tanya Hoskins' phone, evidence that would dramatically alter the trajectory of the case. Initially working with limited information, prosecutors made a charging decision that would soon spark community outrage. On July 20th, 2023, just 2 days after Tyra's death, the district attorney's office charged Stephanie Alexander with voluntary manslaughter rather than murder. The decision hinged on their assessment that she acted in the heat of passion upon discovering her husband's infidelity, a legal distinction that carried a significantly lighter potential sentence. The charge ignited immediate backlash from Tyra's family. "She killed my baby in cold blood," Tanya Hoskins told reporters outside the courthouse, her voice breaking with emotion. "This wasn't a split-second reaction. She had time to get her gun, load it, and confront my daughter." The family's attorney pointed out that Tyra was unarmed, partially undressed, and attempting to leave when shot. Community activists quickly rallied around the Hoskins family, organizing a candlelight vigil at Camp Green Park that drew hundreds of supporters. Many carried signs questioning whether racial bias influenced the charging decision, as Stephanie is white and Tyra was black. "Would the charges be different if the shooter was black and the victim white?" asked Reverend James Thompson, a local civil rights leader. Adding to the family's outrage, Stephanie posted a $250,000 bond within hours of her arrest and walked free by 8 p.m. that same evening. "Human life has no value in this system," Tanya Hoskins said, watching her daughter's killer return home while she prepared for Tyra's funeral. The case took a dramatic turn in early August when Tanya Hoskins provided investigators with the 8-minute voicemail left on her phone during the confrontation. Detectives described listening to the recording as hearing a murder unfold in real time. The audio contradicted Stephanie's claim of a spontaneous reaction, revealing instead an extended confrontation where she had multiple opportunities to de-escalate. "This recording changes everything," District Attorney Michael Harrison announced at a press conference on August 15th. "It demonstrates premeditation, threats, and a deliberate decision to retrieve a weapon before the confrontation." Based on this new evidence, prosecutors presented the case to a grand jury, which returned an indictment for second-degree murder on August 23rd. The upgraded charge acknowledged that while the killing might not have been planned days in advance, Stephanie had formed the specific intent to kill during the confrontation. Second-degree murder carried a potential sentence of up to 40 years, significantly more than the maximum 10 years for voluntary manslaughter. Stephanie surrendered to authorities the following day, but once again posted bond within hours. Her attorney issued a statement claiming the voicemail had been selectively edited and failed to capture the full context of the situation. Meanwhile, forensic analysts confirmed the recording's authenticity and timeline, strengthening the prosecution's case that Tyra's death was neither accidental nor justified. Stephanie Alexander's ability to secure immediate freedom following both her initial arrest and subsequent murder charge sparked intense debate about privilege within the justice system. Within 3 hours of her booking on the second-degree murder charge, she posted a $500,000 bond, double her original bail, but still insufficient to keep her detained. The system is designed to protect people like her. Tanya Hoskins told supporters gathered outside the courthouse, "My daughter is in the ground while her killer goes home to sleep in her own bed." Legal experts noted that while the bond amount was substantial, it represented just 10% of Alexander's reported net worth, making it relatively painless for her to secure release. Throughout the 16 months between arrest and trial, Alexander remained free with minimal restrictions. She was required to surrender her passport and check in weekly with a pretrial services officer, but otherwise maintained her normal life, a privilege that the victim's family viewed as a profound injustice and that highlighted disparities in how the bail system treats defendants of different socioeconomic backgrounds. The court proceedings began in earnest in September 2024, following multiple delays requested by Alexander's defense team. Judge Eleanor Simmons presided over a courtroom divided literally and figuratively. Tyra's family and supporters on one side, Alexander's on the other, with armed deputies positioned strategically between them. The prosecution opened with the 8-minute voicemail, playing it in its entirety, while jurors followed transcripts. Several jurors visibly winced at the sound of the gunshot. The state's case emphasized 3 key points. Alexander had time to consider her actions, Tyra posed no threat, and Alexander deliberately misled first responders about the circumstances. This was an execution, not self-defense, Prosecutor James Wilson argued. Ms. Alexander had multiple opportunities to walk away, call police, or simply allow the young woman to leave. Instead, she chose to be judge, jury, and executioner. The defense countered by painting Alexander as a victim herself, a woman who discovered an intruder in her home and reacted out of fear and betrayal. Their star witness was Alexander's husband, who testified that he believed his wife was just trying to scare Tyra and didn't intentionally aim the gun at her. This testimony backfired dramatically during cross-examination when the prosecution forced him to admit he had invited Tyra to the house without disclosing his marriage. "So you created this dangerous situation," Wilson pressed, "by deceiving both women?" His reluctant yes seemed to deflate the defense's narrative of Alexander as the primary victim in the case. If you're watching this video and feeling outraged about how quickly Stephanie Alexander walked free after taking a young woman's life, hit that like button right now. The disparity in our justice system deserves our collective attention and action. Consider this. How is it possible that someone charged with taking a human life can post bond and return to normal life within hours? Would this same privilege extend to all defendants regardless of their race, income, or social status? The statistics suggest otherwise. Studies show that over 60% of people in local jails are there not because they've been convicted, but because they cannot afford bail. What changes would you propose to make our bail system more equitable? Should violent crimes like homicide have different pretrial detention standards? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters in this important conversation. And if you're learning something valuable from this analysis, please subscribe to Explosive True Crime Stories. We don't just cover these cases. We examine the systems that allow injustice to flourish and highlight ways we can all push for meaningful change. Hit that notification bell to stay informed about cases like Tyra's that expose the flaws in our criminal justice system. Your engagement helps us reach more people with these crucial discussions. On December 5th, 2024, just 3 days before the jury was expected to begin deliberations, Stephanie Alexander accepted a plea deal. In a hushed courtroom, she stood before Judge Simmons and pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, the very charge that had initially outraged Tyra's family 17 months earlier. The prosecution explained their decision to offer the deal, citing concerns about potential jury nullification and the unpredictability of trials involving domestic situations. While we believe the evidence supported a second-degree murder conviction, This agreement guarantees Ms. Alexander will serve substantial prison time, District Attorney Harrison stated. The plea agreement specified a sentence of 60 to 84 months, 5 to 7 years in state prison. For Tyra's family, this represented a fraction of the justice they had sought. Legal experts noted that with good behavior, Alexander could potentially be released in just over 4 years, receiving credit for time served during pretrial proceedings. Before accepting the plea, Alexander read a prepared statement. I deeply regret my actions that morning and the pain I've caused the Crosby family. The sentencing hearing on December 12th erupted into chaos when Alexander's husband approached the podium to make a statement. As he began speaking about his role in this tragedy, Tyra's cousin lunged toward him, shouting, "You killed her too. You brought her there to die." Deputies immediately intervened, restraining the cousin, while Judge Simmons called for order. The courtroom required 15 minutes to settle before proceedings could continue. When they resumed, security had been doubled, with officers positioned between the families. Judge Simmons delivered the agreed-upon sentence of 60 to 84 months, adding that Alexander would be required to complete anger management and counseling during her incarceration. While no sentence can restore what was lost, the court believes this resolution acknowledges both the defendant's acceptance of responsibility and the gravity of taking a human life, she stated. As Alexander was led away in handcuffs, her husband watched silently. Unlike previous hearings, he made no attempt to embrace or speak with her, a detail that court observers noted might indicate their relationship had fractured under the weight of the tragedy they had created together. Outside the courthouse, Tanya Hoskins faced a wall of news cameras, her face etched with grief and anger. 5 years for my daughter's life, she said, her voice barely audible. The system failed Tyra twice, first by letting her killer walk free for over a year, and now with this slap on the wrist. The family's attorney announced their intention to pursue a wrongful death civil suit against both Stephanie and her husband. No amount of money will bring Tyra back, he stated, but we will continue fighting for accountability in every available forum. Tyra's younger sister held up a portrait of the aspiring fashion designer. Remember her name, she told reporters. Remember Tyra Chanel Crosby, not as a victim, but as a bright light extinguished far too soon. Tyra Crosby's tragic death highlights several warning signs that, in retrospect, might have prevented this fatal encounter. The most glaring red flag was the husband's deliberate concealment of his marital status. According to friends who were with Tyra earlier that evening, she had specifically asked if he was single, and he had confirmed he was. This intentional deception created the dangerous situation that followed. Another warning sign appeared when he invited her to his shared home, rather than suggesting a neutral location. Security experts note that visiting a new acquaintance's residence carries inherent risks, particularly late at night when judgment may be impaired and help is less accessible. The late hour itself, after 4 a.m., represented another risk factor that might have been recognized. The husband's behavior at the arcade, captured on surveillance footage, revealed additional concerning patterns. He was observed checking his phone frequently, likely monitoring his wife's location or work schedule. This hypervigilance suggests he was actively managing the risk of discovery rather than being spontaneous. Perhaps most telling was the absence of personal touches in the home that would indicate a woman lived there. Court testimony revealed that Stephanie's photos had been turned down and her personal items moved before Tyra's arrival. This calculated preparation demonstrates the husband's awareness that his actions were wrong and potentially dangerous. For Tyra, these subtle signs were nearly impossible to detect without prior knowledge. Her tragic story reminds us that danger often hides behind charming facades, and that deception in relationships can have devastating consequences beyond emotional harm. Personal safety experts recommend several strategies that might have helped Tyra and could protect others in similar situations. First and foremost is location verification. Before going home with someone new, consider suggesting a video call with a roommate or friend who can confirm the person lives alone or with the people they claim to live with. Share your location with trusted friends when meeting new people. Apps like Life 360, Find My Friends, or even sending a pinned location through messaging platforms create a safety net. Establish a check-in system with specific times and a clear understanding of what actions your friend should take if you don't check in. The 20-minute rule saved my client's life, explains Charlotte-based safety consultant Rebecca Torres. She told her friend to call the police if she didn't text back within 20 minutes of arriving at a date's home. When she discovered concerning items, suggesting he wasn't single, she used this prearranged system to extract herself safely. Consider a verification date in public before going to someone's private residence. Use this time to ask direct questions about their living situation and relationship status. Pay attention to how they handle their phone. Excessive secrecy or frequent checking might indicate they're hiding something. Trust your instincts about inconsistencies. If someone's story changes or details don't align, prioritize your safety over politeness. Having a pre-planned excuse to leave can make extraction easier. My friend just texted she needs help. Or, I forgot I have an early meeting. Provide non-confrontational exits from potentially dangerous situations. Dr. Elaine Montgomery, a forensic psychologist specializing in domestic violence, sees Stephanie Alexander's actions as part of a recognizable pattern. What makes this case particularly interesting is that the violence wasn't directed at her husband, the actual betrayer, but at the third party who had incomplete information. Dr. Montgomery explains. This displacement of rage is common in cases where the power dynamic makes confronting the primary source of pain feel unsafe or unproductive. The 8-minute confrontation captured on voicemail reveals classic escalation patterns seen in domestic violence situations. There's a power assertion phase where Stephanie establishes dominance by controlling Tyra's movement and wielding the weapon. This is followed by justification, where she frames her actions as reasonable responses to being wronged. Notes Dr. Montgomery. Criminal psychologist Dr. James Whitfield points to the husband's behavior as equally troubling. He created a deadly triangle by deliberately deceiving both women, then attempted to position himself as a mediator rather than the catalyst. This manipulation is characteristic of individuals who provoke conflict between others to deflect responsibility from themselves. Research on lethal domestic violence indicates that access to firearms significantly increases fatality risk. A 2022 study found that women are 5 times more likely to be killed when their abuser has access to a gun. While this case doesn't fit the typical domestic violence profile, the presence of a firearm transformed what might have been a heated confrontation into a homicide. What's particularly disturbing about this case is the calculated nature of Alexander's response, observes domestic violence advocate Maria Sanchez. The decision to retrieve the gun before the confrontation suggests premeditation rather than impulsive reaction. This distinction became central to the legal proceedings, but ultimately didn't result in the murder conviction the prosecution sought. Experts agree that jealousy-motivated violence often follows predictable patterns that can be interrupted with proper intervention. Unfortunately, in Tyra's case, the speed of escalation and her unfamiliarity with the volatile situation she had unknowingly entered left little opportunity for de-escalation or escape. In the aftermath of the trial, Tanya Hoskins transformed her grief into purpose by establishing the Tyra Chanel Foundation in February 2025. The organization provides safety resources for young adults and advocates for stronger legal protections for victims of deception-related violence. My daughter's death exposed gaps in our legal system that we cannot ignore, Hoskins explained at the foundation's launch event, which coincided with what would have been Tyra's 27th birthday. Tyra's clothing line, which had been gaining momentum before her death, was revived by her cousins, who now manage the brand with proceeds supporting the foundation. Each piece carries a small tag with safety tips and resources, a subtle but powerful reminder of Tyra's story. The spring collection featured designs Tyra had sketched but never had the chance to create, bringing her creative vision to life posthumously. The family's advocacy has already influenced local policy discussions. Charlotte City Council members are considering the Tyra Chanel Transparency Act, which would fund educational programs about relationship deception and violence prevention in high schools and colleges throughout the city. If one young person recognizes a dangerous situation because of what happened to my daughter, Hoskins said, then Tyra's legacy becomes one of protection rather than just tragedy. The Alexander case has become a flashpoint in ongoing debates about bail reform, sentencing disparities, and how the justice system handles crimes involving relationship dynamics. Legal scholars point to the case as evidence that current manslaughter laws may inadequately address situations where deception creates deadly scenarios. The gap between murder and manslaughter charges doesn't account for cases like Tyra's, explains criminal justice professor Dr. Amara Wilson. When someone retrieves a weapon before a confrontation, that suggests premeditation. Yet our legal system often reduces charges when relationships are involved. This observation has prompted lawmakers in 3 states to review their criminal codes regarding intent and domestic situations. The case also highlighted troubling patterns in pretrial detention. A 2024 study by the Brennan Center for Justice found that defendants in cases similar to Alexander's spent an average of 432 days in pretrial detention if they couldn't afford bail, compared to Alexander's immediate release. This disparity has energized bail reform advocates who argue that pretrial freedom should be based on public safety risk rather than financial resources. Perhaps most significantly, Tyra's case has sparked renewed conversation about how third parties in relationship deceptions deserve legal protection. The person who is deceived about someone's relationship status is often treated as complicit rather than as another victim of manipulation, notes victims' rights attorney Sophia Washington. Tyra's story challenges us to reconsider that perspective. If Tyra's story has impacted you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Explosive True Crime Stories. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these important narratives to light. Stories that might otherwise be forgotten after the headlines fade. In the comments below, share your thoughts on relationship safety and what warning signs you look for when meeting new people. Your insights could help someone recognize a dangerous situation before it's too late. Have you ever encountered deception in a relationship? What strategies did you use to protect yourself? For those who want to learn more about protecting themselves or loved ones, I've included links in the description to the Tyra Chanel Foundation safety resources, including their free Safe Date verification app and emergency extraction service. These tools were developed directly in response to the circumstances that led to Tyra's death. Finally, please share this video with someone who might benefit from these safety discussions. While these conversations can be uncomfortable, they're essential for preventing similar tragedies. Remember, relationship violence doesn't always look like we expect. Sometimes the danger comes from unexpected sources and in unexpected ways. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming episode examining how digital evidence, like Tyra's voicemail, is changing criminal investigations and prosecutions. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and look out for one another.